June 13, 1944, 7 days after D-Day, a dirt road outside Villers-Bocage, France. Oberscharführer Michael Wittmann leans against the turret of his Tiger Bauer, a cigarette dangling from his lips. The morning sun glints off the tank's thick frontal armor, 100 millimeters of hardened Krupp steel that can shrug off almost anything the Allies can throw at it. Around him, his crew is laughing. They're watching something through binoculars. About 800 meters down the road, a column of American M4 Sherman tanks is moving through the hedgerows, slow, cautious. The distinctive rounded shape of the Sherman turret makes them easy to spot even at this distance. Ronson's, one of the loaders, mutters, using the nickname that's already spread through the Wehrmacht like wildfire. Ronson after the American cigarette lighter company whose slogan promised their product lights every time. It's what German tankers call the Sherman because it burns every single time. Wittmann takes a long drag and doesn't smile. He's already destroyed 138 enemy tanks on the Eastern Front. He knows what happens when an 80-millimeter round punches through a Sherman's thin armor. The American tanks use gasoline engines, not diesel. And their ammunition is stored in sponsons along the hull sides, unprotected. One penetrating hit, and the whole thing goes up like a Roman candle. He's seen it dozens of times, the flash, the smoke pouring from every hatch. Crew members, the ones who make it out, stumbling away with their uniforms on fire. The men around him keep joking. Someone mentions that 5 Shermans are needed to take out 1 Panther. Another gunner chimes in with the rumor that American tankers have a betting pool on who can bail out fastest when the shooting starts. But Wittmann isn't laughing, he's counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He stops counting at 23 Shermans in the column, and this is just one road, one small sector of the Normandy front. His radio crackles. Command is reporting more American armor pushing through Caumont, more at Tilly-sur-Seulles, more at Carentan. The reports keep coming. Dozens of tanks, hundreds of tanks. Wittmann grinds out his cigarette under his boot and climbs back into his Tiger. His crew is still grinning, still confident. They've been taught that German armor is superior. German engineering is unmatched. 1 Tiger equals 10 Shermans in a straight fight, and they're right. But as Wittmann settles into his commander's seat and scans the horizon, he's thinking about something his instructor said back at the Panzer school in Paderborn, something most of his crew has forgotten. It doesn't matter if you can kill 10 enemy tanks, the instructor had warned, if the enemy can field 100. Through his optics, Wittmann watches the Sherman column disappear into the bocage, the maze of hedgerows and sunken roads that crisscrosses Normandy. He knows his Tiger is better, heavier armor, more powerful gun, superior optics. But he also knows something else, something that's starting to gnaw at the back of his mind as he watches yet another American tank column appear on a parallel road to the south. They just keep coming. His gunner, Balthazar Wohl, taps him on the shoulder and points. More Shermans. A different unit this time, marked with different divisional insignia. Fresh paint. No battle damage. Where are they all coming from, Wohl asks. Wittmann doesn't answer. Because he's starting to realize something that most of the Wehrmacht won't understand for weeks yet. Something that will change everything about this war. The Americans aren't trying to build a better tank. They're building more tanks than Germany can possibly destroy. August 2nd, 1944, Panzer Lehr Division Headquarters, a farmhouse cellar near Mortain, France. The maps are wrong. That's the first thing Generalleutnant Fritz Bayerlein notices when he spreads the intelligence reports across the table. Not wrong in the cartographic sense, the roads and villages are all correctly marked. But the unit symbols scattered across Normandy don't match reality anymore. 3 days ago, his reconnaissance reported the American 2nd Armored Division at St. Lo. Now that same division is fighting near Avranches, 40 kilometers away, in 3 days. That's not a redeployment. That's not even fast for a mechanized unit. That's impossible. Bayerlein's staff officers stand around the table in silence. They're looking at the same maps, seeing the same problem. American armored divisions are appearing in multiple places simultaneously. Entire tank battalions that were reported destroyed last week are back in action with full strength, like nothing happened. A young intelligence lieutenant clears his throat. Herr General, the Americans are landing replacement tanks at Omaha Beach. Our reconnaissance counted. They counted 47 Shermans being unloaded yesterday from a single Liberty ship. Bayerlein looks up. 47 tanks from one ship. Jawohl. And how many Liberty ships are unloading at the beachhead? The lieutenant glances down at his notes. His hand is shaking slightly. Our last reconnaissance flight counted 19 ships just at Omaha. That doesn't include Utah Beach or the British sectors. Do the math. 47 tanks per ship, 19 ships. That's nearly 900 tanks in a single day at a single beach. Bayerlein sits down slowly. He fought in North Africa under Rommel. He saw the Afrika Korps bled white because every destroyed Panzer had to be shipped from Germany, repaired in Italian factories, and transported back across the Mediterranean, a journey that could take months. When Rommel lost 50 tanks at El Alamein, it meant 50 fewer tanks for the next battle, and the battle after that. But the Americans, one of his Panzer commanders, Hauptmann Werner Kortenhaus, steps forward. Kortenhaus commanded a company of Panthers in the fighting around Caen. Or rather, he used to command a company. 3 weeks ago he had 14 tanks. Now he has 4. 3 are awaiting parts that will never arrive. 1 is operational. They don't repair them, Kortenhaus says quietly. The Americans, they don't repair their tanks. Everyone turns to look at him. At Caen we knocked out 6 Shermans from the American 3rd Armored. Good kills, flank shots, penetrations, brew-ups. We reported them destroyed. He pauses. The next morning, those same tanks, same unit markings, same position in the column were back. Not repaired, replaced. Fresh tanks, fresh crews. Fresh. Bayerlein stares at him. In one night? In one night. Another officer speaks up. Major Rudolf von Ribbentrop, a Knight's Cross recipient, who commanded a Tiger company at Villers-Bocage. I shot 9 Shermans in 15 minutes on June 13th. 9 confirmed kills. Perfect ambush. My Tiger performed flawlessly. He's not bragging. His voice is hollow. 2 days later, the British 7th Armored Division attacked the same position with full tank strength. As if nothing had happened. As if we hadn't just destroyed an entire company. The cellar goes quiet, except for the distant rumble of artillery. American artillery, always American artillery. They never seem to run out of shells either. Bayerlein picks up another intelligence report. This one is from the Luftwaffe, what's left of it. A reconnaissance pilot managed to photograph the Normandy beaches last week before being shot down. Bayerlein has seen the photos. He stared at them for hours. The beaches look like an industrial complex. Floating piers, temporary harbors, cranes, warehouses, fuel depots, and tanks. Hundreds of tanks, lined up in neat rows waiting to be driven inland, fresh from America. He thinks about his own division. Panzer Lehr was considered the elite, the best-trained, best-equipped armored division in the Wehrmacht. When they arrived in Normandy in June, they had 183 tanks and assault guns. Now, 8 weeks later, they have 47 operational vehicles. 36 Panthers destroyed, 21 Panzer IV knocked out, 14 assault guns lost, and the ones still running, they're held together with salvaged parts and prayers. His maintenance crews are cannibalizing 3 broken tanks just to keep one running. Meanwhile, the Americans land 1,500 fresh tanks every week. Bayerlein does the math again, can't help himself. If his division loses 50 tanks per week, and they're losing more than that, the Americans are replacing their losses 30 times over. It's not a battle of quality anymore. It's mathematics, industrial mathematics. One of the staff officers asks the question everyone is thinking. Where are they building them all? Bayerlein looks at the map one more time, at the dozens of American unit symbols, at the arrows showing their advances, at the intelligence estimates that keep being revised upward. Everywhere, he says finally. They're building them everywhere. November 1943, 7 months before Normandy, Detroit, Michigan, the Chrysler Tank Arsenal. Rosie Kowalski clocks in at 6:47 a.m., 13 minutes early for her shift. She's 23 years old, 5'2", and before the war she worked at a textile mill making bedsheets. Now she's a welder on tank assembly line number 4. The noise hits her the moment she walks onto the factory floor. It's not just loud, it's a physical presence. The shriek of metal being cut, the pneumatic hammer blows of riveting guns, the rumble of overhead cranes swinging 5-ton turrets through the air. 2,000 workers moving in choreographed chaos across a space the size of 6 football fields. And tanks, everywhere, tanks. They move down the assembly line like cars, except these cars weigh 30 tons and have 75mm cannons. Rosie has been working here for 8 months, and she still can't quite believe what she's seeing. This single factory is producing Shermans faster than the entire German Reich produces all of its tanks combined. She takes her position at Station 47. Her job is simple: weld the glacis plate joints on the lower hull, 37 welds per tank. She has 12 minutes to complete them before the hull moves to the next station. 12 minutes. That's it. The supervisor, a man named Chuck Dietrich, who used to manage a Packard dealership, walks the line with a stopwatch. He's not cruel about it, but he doesn't have to be. The line doesn't stop, ever. If Rosie falls behind, the whole sequence backs up, 2,000 workers waiting on her. She pulls down her welding mask and strikes an arc. The electrode tip glows white-hot. Sparks cascade off the steel. She works from muscle memory now, her hands moving in practiced patterns. 12 minutes, 37 welds. A tank every hour. 20 tanks per shift. 48 tanks per day. 336 tanks per week. Just from this one assembly line, Chrysler has 5 lines running, and that's just Chrysler. Ford has a tank plant in Dearborn. Fisher Body has one in Grand Blanc. Pacific Car and Foundry is building them in Seattle. Pressed Steel is building them in Philadelphia. Baldwin Locomotive is building them in Eddystone. Lima Locomotive is building them in Ohio. 11 major factories, 475 subcontractors supplying parts, running 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The hull in front of Rosie moves forward on the conveyor. 12 minutes gone. She steps back and another hull slides into position. The steel is still warm from the foundry. Stamped into its side is a production number, 44 18776. The 44 means it was produced in 1944. The rest means this is the 18,776th Sherman tank built this year. It's only March. At Station 62, 2 workers are installing the transmission. At Station 78, the engine is being lowered into place, a 9-cylinder radial that was designed for aircraft and repurposed for tanks. At Station 95, the turret is being mated to the hull with 4 men guiding it into position while an overhead crane does the heavy lifting. By the time the tank reaches the end of the line, it's complete, fully assembled, fueled, armed, ready to fight. A crew of Army inspectors will test fire the main gun, drive it around a proving ground, and if everything checks out, which it almost always does, the tank will be loaded onto a train within 24 hours. From raw steel to combat ready in less than a week. Rosie finishes her 37th weld and steps back. The hull moves on. Another takes its place. She doesn't know where these tanks are going, doesn't know the names of the crews who will drive them, doesn't know which ones will be knocked out in Normandy or the Ardennes or at the Rhine crossing. She just knows her job. 37 welds, 12 minutes, next tank. Down the line, a man named James Washington is installing periscopes. He's never installed a periscope before December 1941. He was a janitor at a high school in Tennessee. Now he can install 8 periscopes in under 6 minutes with his eyes closed. At the gun mount station, a woman named Betty Chen is torquing down the traverse gear. She's a college graduate with a degree in music. She can assemble a turret traverse mechanism faster than the Army instructors who wrote the technical manual. None of them are engineers. None of them are master craftsmen. They're ordinary people doing repetitive tasks with extraordinary efficiency. And they're building an army. The supervisor walks past Rosie's station and nods. She's on pace. 37 welds in 11 minutes, 40 seconds, 20 seconds to spare. Good work, he says, barely audible over the din. Hitler doesn't know what's coming. But Rosie thinks maybe Hitler does know, or at least he's about to find out. Because this isn't just one factory. This same scene is playing out in 11 locations across America. Thousands of workers, tens of thousands of welds, hundreds of tanks every single day rolling off assembly lines and onto trains, heading east to ports where Liberty ships are waiting. The Germans have better tanks, everyone knows that. The Tiger, the Panther, superior armor, superior guns. But Germany's best tank factory, Henschel in Kassel, can produce 25 Tiger tanks per month when everything goes perfectly. This one assembly line, Station 47, where Rosie Kowalski makes 37 welds every 12 minutes, is part of a system that produces more Shermans in a single day than Germany produces Tigers in a month. Another hull slides into position. Still warm, stamped with a number. Rosie strikes an arc and gets back to work. July 28, 1944, a field outside Saint-Lô, France. Dawn. Hauptmann Otto Carius stands in a graveyard of American tanks and tries to understand what he's looking at. 14 Shermans, all destroyed, most of them still smoking from yesterday's battle. His Tiger Company ambushed an American column pushing through the hedgerows, a textbook engagement. His tanks were hulled down behind an earthen berm. The Americans came around a blind corner at 20 kilometers per hour, completely exposed. It was a slaughter. Carius's gunner knocked out the lead Sherman with the first shot. 80mm armor-piercing round through the frontal turret at 600 meters. The Sherman didn't brew up immediately, just stopped dead, smoke pouring from the hatches. The second Sherman tried to reverse. Carius's loader was fast, very fast, round loaded in 8 seconds. The gunner fired again, another penetration, another kill. The Americans kept coming anyway. That's what Carius can't understand. They kept coming. Even after watching 2 of their own tanks get destroyed in 15 seconds, the rest of the column pushed forward, not retreating, not flanking, just forward, directly into the kill zone. His company destroyed 14 Shermans in 11 minutes, 0 German losses. A perfect engagement by any tactical standard. So why does Carius feel like he just lost? He walks between the wrecks now in the early morning light. The metal is still hot enough that he can feel the heat radiating off the hulls. One Sherman is overturned completely, blown off its tracks by an internal ammunition explosion. Another has a neat hole punched through the turret you can see daylight through both sides. These tanks never stood a chance. Not against Tigers, not in this terrain. But here's what bothers him. The production numbers stamped on the hulls. 44 2891, 44 4003, 44 14156. All produced in 1944, all within a few hundred serial numbers of each other, which means these tanks were built within days of each other, shipped together, arrived in France together, fresh from American factories. Carius looks back at his own Tiger. It's a beautiful machine, powerful, deadly. But it's also the same tank he's been fighting in since April. The same tank that requires 8 hours of maintenance for every hour of combat. The same tank that goes through transmissions like most vehicles go through spark plugs. Last week his company lost a Tiger. Not to enemy fire to a thrown track that couldn't be repaired because the replacement parts are somewhere in Germany, waiting for a rail transport that will never arrive because the Allies keep bombing the rail lines. One Tiger lost to logistics, irreplaceable. He hears an engine behind him, turns. An American recovery vehicle is pulling up to the field, a modified Sherman with a crane assembly. Behind it, a flatbed truck. 3 U.S. Army soldiers dismount, walking casually like they're on a Sunday drive. Carius unslings his MP-40 but doesn't raise it. The Americans haven't seen him yet. They're 70 meters away surveying the wrecked tanks. One of them, a sergeant by his stripes, walks up to the nearest Sherman, the one with the hole through the turret. He peers inside, shakes his head, makes a note on a clipboard. Then he spray paints a large red X on the glacis plate. Not salvageable. The sergeant moves to the next tank. This one is less damage, track blown off, engine compartment scorched, but the hull is mostly intact. He consults his clipboard again, makes another note. This time he spray paints a yellow circle on the turret. Recoverable for parts. Carius watches this process repeat. The Americans are cataloging their losses like a grocery store manager doing inventory. No anger, no grief, just accounting. 5 red X's, 4 yellow circles, 3 tanks marked with green squares, light damage, worth recovering fully. The sergeant radios something back to his unit. Within 10 minutes, 2 more recovery vehicles arrive. They hook chains to the tanks marked with green squares and start dragging them out of the field. The process is efficient, practiced. These crews have done this before, many times before. One of the American soldiers notices Carius. For a moment they lock eyes across the field. The American is young, maybe 19. He doesn't look scared, doesn't reach for his rifle. He just looks tired. Then a whistle blows. The Americans mount up and drive away, dragging 3 of the 14 destroyed Shermans with them. The rest they leave behind. 11 tanks, just abandoned, like trash. Carius lowers his weapon and walks back to his Tiger. His radio operator, a man named Kramer, is listening to Wehrmacht radio intercepts. "Hauptmann," Kramer says quietly, "you should hear this." He holds out the headset. Carius listens. It's a conversation between 2 American tank units, speaking in clear English on an unsecured channel. They're not even bothering with code. "Baker Company, this is Abel. We're down 4 tanks at grid 647, requesting replacements." A pause. Static. "Abel, this is Battalion. Replacements inbound. ETA 40 minutes. 4 M4A1s. Fresh crews. Uploading ammo and fuel now. 40 minutes. They lost 4 tanks, and they'll have 4 new ones in 40 minutes. Carius thinks about the Tiger his company lost last week to a thrown track. It's still sitting 3 kilometers behind the lines because they don't have the parts to fix it, and they don't have the heavy transport to move it. And even if they did, the replacement transmission is in Stuttgart waiting to be machined because the factory keeps getting bombed. One Tiger, lost for weeks, maybe permanently. Kramer is looking at him. "Sir, the Americans at Omaha Beach. Our reconnaissance says they're unloading tanks at a rate of—" "I know," Carius cuts him off. "I know." He looks back at the field. At the 11 Sherman carcasses, the Americans didn't even bother to recover. 11 tanks they just wrote off. Acceptable losses. Not worth the fuel to haul back. In 3 weeks, Germany will have produced maybe 50 new Panzers of all types, Tigers, Panthers, Panzer IVs combined. In that same time period, the Americans will have produced 600 Shermans. Carius climbs back into his Tiger. His crew is waiting. They're good men. His gunner can hit a moving target at 800 meters. His loader can maintain a fire rate of 6 rounds per minute. His driver can coax this 50-ton beast through mud that would stop lesser vehicles. And it doesn't matter, because for every Sherman he destroys, 3 more will take its place by morning. The Americans aren't trying to outfight the Wehrmacht. They're trying to outnumber them, and it's working. August 17, 1944, the Falaise Pocket, France, 2:14 p.m. Oberfeldwebel Hans Becker is standing next to a dead Panther when he realizes Germany has already lost the war. The Panther is beautiful, even in death. 75 tons of sloped armor and a long-barreled 75mm gun that can punch through a Sherman at 2,000 meters. It's sitting at the edge of a narrow country road, its engine cold, its turret traversed to the side like it fell asleep mid-battle. There's not a scratch on it. No penetrations, no shell impacts, no fire damage. The crew bailed out yesterday and disappeared into the countryside. The tank didn't break down in combat, didn't throw a track, didn't suffer a catastrophic mechanical failure. It just stopped. Becker pops the rear engine hatch and immediately sees the problem. The fuel tanks are bone dry, not a drop left. This 45-ton killing machine has been abandoned because it ran out of gas. He closes the hatch and looks around. He can see 4 more Panthers from where he's standing, all abandoned, all intact, all out of fuel. The Falaise Pocket is collapsing. The Americans are pushing from the south, the British and Canadians from the north. The Wehrmacht is trapped in a shrinking circle of Norman countryside, and the only escape route is a narrow gap near Chambois that's getting smaller by the hour. And half the panzers in the pocket are sitting dead beside the roads because there's no fuel left to run them. Becker's unit, what's left of it, received orders 3 days ago to retreat east. Simple enough, except the fuel trucks never arrived. The supply convoy was destroyed by American fighter bombers somewhere near Argenton. So was the backup convoy, and the one before that. The Americans own the skies now, completely, utterly. A German supply truck can't move 10 kilometers in daylight without being strafed by Thunderbolts or Mustangs. The Luftwaffe, gone. Becker hasn't seen a German aircraft in 2 weeks. His commander, Major Ernst König, walks up. König is 42 years old, a veteran of Poland, France, and Russia. He fought at Kursk. He's seen the worst the Red Army can throw at the Wehrmacht, but he's never seen anything like this. "How many?" König asks, looking at the abandoned Panthers. "In this sector? 17 confirmed, maybe more in the woods." König doesn't respond. He's staring down the road where a column of German vehicles is backed up for 3 kilometers. Trucks, half-tracks, staff cars, all stopped, all waiting for fuel that isn't coming. And beyond them, in the distance, Becker can hear it. A sound that's become as familiar as his own heartbeat over the past 2 months. Tank engines, American tank engines, dozens of them. The distinctive rumble of Sherman radials getting closer. "They're not stopping," König says quietly. "The Americans, they don't stop." Becker knows what he means. Yesterday, his unit ambushed an American tank platoon near Troon, 5 Shermans. They knocked out 3 of them in the first-minute textbook defensive position, perfect fields of fire. The 2 surviving Shermans reversed into cover. The Germans waited. Standard doctrine. The Americans would regroup, call for infantry support, probe for weaknesses. But 30 minutes later, the Americans came back, not with 2 tanks, with 12, a completely different unit, fresh tanks with different markings. They rolled right over the German position through sheer weight of numbers. Becker's company lost 2 Panzer Derfis. They destroyed 6 Shermans total. And this morning, reconnaissance reported that same American unit back at full strength. 12 tanks, as if yesterday never happened. König pulls out a cigarette but doesn't light it. His hands are shaking slightly, not from fear, from something else. Something worse than fear, despair. "Do you know what I heard on the radio this morning?" König asks. "Berlin is claiming we've destroyed over 3,000 Allied tanks since D-Day." Becker waits. 3,000 tanks, Hans. We've killed 3,000 of their tanks in 2 months. König finally lights the cigarette, takes a long drag, and they still have more than they started with. The math is simple, brutal, undeniable. The Wehrmacht has destroyed American tanks at an impressive rate. German tank crews are better trained. German tanks are better armed. In almost every engagement, the Germans achieve favorable kill ratios, and they're still losing, because the Americans land 1,500 replacement tanks per week at Normandy. The Germans produce maybe 200 tanks per month for the entire Western Front. You can't kill them fast enough. A runner appears, breathless. "Herr Major, the Americans have closed the gap at Chambois. The road is cut." König closes his eyes. The pocket is sealed. 20,000 German soldiers trapped, along with what's left of 2 Panzer divisions. Becker looks back at the abandoned Panther, at the perfect untouched armor, at the powerful gun that could kill any Allied tank it faced, sitting useless because there's no fuel to run it and no way to get more fuel, and even if there was fuel, there are no spare parts to fix the transmission that will inevitably break and no way to evacuate the tank when the position is overrun. He thinks about the Sherman crews, the Americans he's been fighting for 2 months. They're not better tankers. They're really not. Most of them are kids who learned to drive a tank 3 months ago in Kentucky or Texas. They make mistakes. They bunch up. They drive into ambushes. And it doesn't matter. Because when they lose a tank, there's another one behind it, and another behind that. And when those are gone, 3 more arrive the next morning, fresh off a Liberty ship, with crews who might live long enough to learn from their mistakes or might die in their first engagement. But either way, there will be more tanks coming behind them. Always more tanks. The sound of American engines is getting louder, closer. Becker can hear the squeak of their tracks now, the distinctive whine of their transmissions. Koenig drops his cigarette and crushes it under his boot. Destroy the guns, he orders. Anything we can't take with us, we destroy. I won't leave working Panzers for the Americans. But even as he says it, Becker can see the truth in the Major's eyes. It doesn't matter. They can blow up every tank in this pocket. They can fight to the last round. They can achieve perfect kill ratios all the way back to Berlin. And the Americans will still keep coming, with more tanks, more fuel, more ammunition, more everything. Because this war stopped being about courage or tactics or superior engineering months ago. Now it's just mathematics, and the numbers don't lie. September 12, 1944, a German field hospital near Aachen, 11:37 p.m. Hauptmann Otto Carius sits on the edge of a cot with his head in his hands, staring at a list of names. 18 names, his crew, his company, men he trained with, fought beside, watched die over the past 3 months. Feldwebel Kramer killed when a P-47 strafed his recovery vehicle outside Mortain. Unteroffizier Wall burned alive when his Panther took a hit to the ammunition rack near Falaz. Obergefreiter Lange captured after his Tiger broke down and couldn't be evacuated. On and on. 18 names out of a company that started with 42 men. The doctors say Carius is lucky. The shell fragment that hit him near Cambrai missed the major arteries in his leg by centimeters. He'll walk again, maybe with a limp, maybe not. Either way, he's alive. Lucky. He doesn't feel lucky. Across the hospital ward, 20 other wounded Panzer crewmen lie in beds. Burns, mostly. Tank crews who got out before their vehicles brewed up, but not fast enough to avoid the flames. The smell of antiseptic can't quite cover the smell of burned flesh. A doctor moves between the beds. Kapitan Reinhardt. He's 60 years old, pulled out of retirement to deal with the flood of casualties pouring back from France. He's also a veteran of the First World War, fought at Verdun. He's seen industrial warfare before. Reinhardt sits down next to Carius without asking, sets down a bottle of schnapps and 2 glasses, pours. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Reinhardt says. "I've seen the future," Carius replies. "It's worse." They drink in silence. Outside, the distant rumble of artillery. Always artillery now. The Americans are at the German border. The Wehrmacht is fighting on its own soil for the first time since 1918. "How many tanks did you kill?" Reinhardt asks. Not cruelly, just curious. Carius has to think about it. "My personal count? Over 100, maybe 120. I stopped keeping track after Normandy. 100 American tanks? British too, some Canadians, mostly Shermans." Reinhardt nods slowly, pours another drink, "And they still beat you." Carius looks at him sharply. Those words would be treasonous coming from most people. Defeatist talk. The kind of thing that gets you shot by SS security police. But Reinhardt just shrugs. "I'm an old man, Hauptmann. I'll be dead from a heart attack before the Gestapo cares what I think. And besides," he gestures at the ward full of broken tankers, "we both know the truth, don't we?" Carius takes another drink. His leg is throbbing. They gave him morphine, but it's wearing off. "I destroyed 120 tanks," he says quietly. "And it didn't matter, not even a little bit." He thinks about the American tank he saw in Normandy, the one with the serial number 44, 18776. He remembers it specifically because he knocked it out, personally perfect shot, through the turret ring at 400 meters. The crew bailed out. The tank burned. 2 days later, he saw serial number 44-31904. That's 13,000 tanks later in the production sequence. 13,000 tanks built between June and August, by the Americans alone. That's not counting British production, Canadian production, Soviet production. Meanwhile, Germany's entire 1944 production run of Tiger IIs, the most advanced heavy tank in the world, will total fewer than 500 vehicles. 500 Tigers versus 13,000 Shermans. And that's just 2 months of American production. Reinhardt is watching him. "You know what I saw at Verdun?" the old doctor asks. I saw Germany and France throw 1,000,000 men into a meat grinder for 10 months, over a few kilometers of worthless mud. Both sides kept feeding in reinforcements, fresh divisions, more artillery shells, more men. Neither side could win, but neither side could stop either. He pauses, takes another drink. But at least at Verdun, both sides were equally matched. We could replace our losses as fast as the French could. The battle only ended because both countries ran out of men at the same time. He looks directly at Carius. This war? This isn't Verdun. This is one side with unlimited resources fighting another side that's already bled dry. A nurse walks past. She's 17 years old. Too young to be a nurse, but Germany is running out of everyone who's old enough for anything. She changes the bandages on a Panzer driver whose hands are burned black. Carius watches her work, thinks about the American nurse he saw 2 weeks ago when his unit overran a field hospital near St. Lo. She looked about the same age, 17, maybe 18. But here's what he remembers most. The American hospital had plasma, real plasma, refrigerated blood supplies, sulfa drugs, penicillin. Their wounded were being treated in heated tents with electric lights and sterilized equipment. This hospital has candles, bandages that are washed and reused, morphine that's rationed so carefully that some wounded men get nothing at all. One side has unlimited everything. The other side is running out of bandages? A commotion at the far end of the ward. 2 orderlies are bringing in a new patient on a stretcher. Panzer crew. Carius can tell from the black uniform. The man is unconscious, badly burned. The nurse, the 17-year-old girl, hurries over, starts to unwrap the bandages to assess the wounds. She stops, steps back. Her face goes pale. Reinhardt walks over, looks at the patient, shakes his head. Infection, he says to the orderlies. Too far gone? Make him comfortable. The orderlies carry the stretcher to a corner, the quiet corner, where they put the ones who aren't going to make it. Carius looks away, thinks about the Sherman crews, the ones who get out of their burning tanks and get picked up by American medics and transported to field hospitals where they have plasma and penicillin and electric lights. The ones who survive their burns because American logistics can supply enough medical resources to actually save them. He thinks about German tank crews who get out of their burning Panzers and bleed out beside a French road because there's no ambulance coming, because the ambulance was destroyed by an air strike, because there's no fuel for the ambulance, because the field hospital is 30 kilometers away and there's no way to get there. Reinhardt sits back down next to him, refills both glasses. You did your duty, the old doctor says. You and your men. You fought well. History will remember that. History will remember that we lost, Carius replies. Yes, Reinhardt agrees. It will remember that too. They sit in silence. Outside, the artillery continues. American artillery. The 150mm shells have a distinctive sound, a freight train rumble that ends in thunder. Carius thinks about something his instructor said at the Panzer school 3 years ago, back when Germany was winning, back when the Panzers were rolling across France and Russia, and everyone believed the Wehrmacht was unstoppable. The instructor had been a veteran of World War I, an old man even then. He'd said something that seemed absurd at the time. Wars are not won by brave men. Wars are won by factories. No one believed him. They were German. They had superior tactics, superior training, superior equipment. Courage and skill would overcome raw numbers. But the old instructor had been right all along, because Carius destroyed 120 enemy tanks, and the Americans replaced them before the week was out. His gunner was the best in the company, and it didn't matter. His Tiger was mechanically superior to anything the Allies fielded, and it didn't matter. What mattered was Detroit and Pittsburgh and Gary, Indiana. What mattered was assembly lines running 24 hours a day. Liberty ships delivering tanks faster than the Wehrmacht could destroy them. An industrial base that could absorb losses that would cripple Germany and just keep building. The morphine is wearing off completely now. His leg feels like it's on fire. Carius doesn't ask for more. He knows they're rationing it, saving it for the ones who need it more. The ones in the quiet corner. Reinhardt stands up, pats Carius on the shoulder. Get some rest, Hauptmann. The war will still be here in the morning. He walks away to check on other patients. Carius lies back on the cot and stares at the ceiling, at the water stains, at the cracks in the plaster. He thinks about the Sherman tank with serial number 4418776, the one he destroyed in June, and he wonders what serial number they're building now. March 24th, 1945, the east bank of the Rhine River, 4:17 a.m. Oberfeldwebel Hans Becker crouches in a concrete bunker and watches the opposite shore through a firing slit. He's been watching for 3 hours, waiting for something he knows is coming, but still can't quite believe. The Americans are going to cross the Rhine, today, maybe this morning. Behind him, his crew sits in silence. 4 men, all that's left of the company that fought in Normandy 9 months ago. They have one operational Panther tank, one. The rest were destroyed, abandoned, or cannibalized for parts during the long retreat from France through Belgium, through the Siegfried Line, to here, the last natural barrier before the heart of Germany. And the Americans are about to cross it. Becker hears it before he sees it, a low rumble that builds and builds until the earth itself seems to vibrate. Not tank engines this time, something else. Aircraft, thousands of aircraft. The sky turns silver with the dawn, and against that silver, Becker sees them coming, wave after wave, B-17s, B-24s, Lancaster bombers, fighter escorts. The armada stretches from horizon to horizon, so many planes that they blot out the sunrise. He's seen bombing raids before, everyone has, but this is different. This isn't a raid. This is an announcement. The bombs begin falling 2 kilometers behind his position, rolling barrages that march across the landscape like footsteps of God. Each explosion sends a pillar of earth and smoke 300 meters into the air. The bunker shakes so violently that dust rains from the ceiling. One of his crew members is praying. The words are lost in the thunder. The bombing continues for 47 minutes without pause. When it finally stops, the silence is somehow worse than the noise. Becker looks through the firing slit again. The opposite shore is obscured by smoke and dust. For a moment he thinks maybe the attack has been delayed. Maybe the Americans are waiting. Then the smoke clears, and he sees them. The Rhine River is 1 kilometer wide at this crossing point, deep, fast-flowing, a natural moat that should take weeks to bridge properly. But the Americans aren't building bridges. They're driving across. Becker blinks, rubs his eyes, looks again. Amphibious vehicles, hundreds of them. Used 6-wheeled trucks that can swim. They're crossing the Rhine like it's a wide road, carrying troops and supplies. Behind them, LVTs tracked landing vehicles originally designed for Pacific Island invasions. They churn through the water in organized waves, 20 vehicles wide, stretching upstream and downstream as far as Becker can see. And behind the amphibious vehicles, combat engineers are assembling pontoon bridges. Not one bridge, not 2. Becker counts 6 separate bridge construction sites within visual range. The Americans are working in broad daylight under smoke cover with such speed and coordination that it looks choreographed. One of the bridges is already finished, already carrying traffic. Sherman tanks are rolling across in a steady stream. Becker watches through his optical sight, counting. He stops at 50. More keep coming. Fire mission, he says into the radio. Enemy armor crossing at grid 473. Request artillery support. Static. Then, no artillery available, ammunition exhausted. Becker keys the mic again. What about the 88s at Emmerich? Destroyed in the air raid. The Nebelwerfer battery at Wesel? Overrun. He releases the mic button, looks at his crew. They heard, they understand. They're alone. His gunner, a teenager named Franz, who's been in the army for 6 weeks, looks at him with wide eyes. Do we engage? Becker looks through the optics again, at the endless stream of vehicles crossing the Rhine, at the combat engineers working like ants on their pontoon bridges, at the fighter aircraft circling overhead, daring anyone to interfere. 1 Panther, 1 tank, against an entire army. The mathematics haven't changed since Normandy. They've only gotten worse. He thinks about Otto Carius. Wonders if the Hauptmann is still alive somewhere. Wonders if he's watching a similar scene on some other part of the front. Wonders if he's doing the same calculation. How many tanks can one Panther destroy before it's overwhelmed? 5? 10? 20? If the crew is skilled, and the gun keeps firing and the ammunition holds out? And how many tanks are crossing the Rhine right now? Hundreds. Thousands. Becker has been a soldier for 4 years. He's fought in France, in Russia, in Belgium. He's seen the Wehrmacht at its strongest and watched it bleed away 1 kilometer at a time. He's a professional. He understands his duty. But he also understands futility. No, he says finally, we don't engage. Franz looks at him in disbelief. But, sir, if we fire, we'll destroy maybe 5 tanks before they locate us and drop artillery on this position. 5 tanks. They're crossing the Rhine with thousands. Becker keeps his voice level, calm. We're not going to change the outcome. We're just going to die. So what do we do? Becker looks at his crew. 4 men, kids, really. Franz is 17. The loader, Dieter, is 18. The driver, Werner, is 19. The radio operator, Klaus, is 20. They're children, and they're going to die for nothing if he gives the order to fight. We wait until dark, Becker says. Then we abandon the tank and head east. Try to reach our families before the Russians do. No one argues. They've all heard the reports from the Eastern Front. The Red Army is 40 kilometers from Berlin. The war is over. Everyone knows it, even if no one will say it out loud. They sit in silence and watch the Americans cross the Rhine. By noon, 4 complete pontoon bridges are operational. By evening, 7. Becker watches an entire armored division cross in 3 hours. Shermans, tank destroyers, half-tracks, trucks, self-propelled artillery. The vehicles move in organized convoys, bumper to bumper, with military police directing traffic like it's a highway interchange in peacetime. He thinks about the German army crossing the Rhine in 1940, going the other direction, into France. That crossing took 2 days and was considered a masterpiece of military engineering. Hitler personally decorated the engineers who built the bridges. The Americans built 7 bridges in 1 day, while under fire, while being bombed by what's left of the Luftwaffe. And they're crossing with more vehicles in 6 hours than Germany sent into France in 2 weeks. As the sun sets, Becker pulls out a piece of paper. The list of names he's been keeping, men from his original company, the ones who didn't make it home. 47 names now. He folds the paper carefully and puts it in his breast pocket. Then he turns to his crew. Destroy the gun, he orders. Drain the fuel. We leave nothing for them. They work in silence. Werner uses a thermite grenade on the main gun's breech. Dieter drains the fuel tanks onto the ground. Klaus smashes the radio with a wrench. Franz removes the optical sights and throws them in the river. The Panther sits dead now. 1 more abandoned German tank in a war full of them. Becker takes one last look across the Rhine, at the American vehicles still crossing in an endless stream, at the portable lights the engineers have set up to continue construction through the night, at the logistics that never stop, never slow, never run out. He thinks about that first day in Normandy, when his commander said the Americans would keep coming, when they didn't believe it, when they thought German skill and courage could overcome American numbers. 9 months ago, a lifetime ago. Let's go, he says to his crew. They climb out of the bunker and disappear into the darkness. Behind them, the Americans keep crossing the Rhine, keep driving east, keep coming, always coming. By morning, 12 pontoon bridges will be operational. By the end of the week, the Americans will have moved 3 entire armies across the Rhine. 15 divisions, 300,000 men, 25,000 vehicles, including more than 4,000 Sherman tanks. The Germans will destroy some of them, maybe hundreds, with ambushes and Panzerfausts and the handful of Panzers still operational. And it won't matter, because behind those 4,000 Shermans, more are being loaded onto transport ships in New York and Philadelphia and Baltimore. More are rolling off assembly lines in Detroit and Grand Blanc and Lima. More are being driven by crews training in Texas and Kentucky and California. The assembly lines never stopped. Not after Normandy, not after the Bulge, not after Remagen. And they're not stopping now. Rosie Kowalski in Detroit is starting her shift. Station 47, 37 welds per tank, 12 minutes per tank. She'll weld 40 tanks today, another 40 tomorrow, another 40 the day after that. She doesn't know that Germany will surrender in 6 weeks. She just knows her job, and she keeps working.